Hey guys, welcome back to more malicious compliance HOA Reddit stories. In this Ripestories video, for 2 years I let my neighbors park on my property for free. But then a new HOA president showed up, tried to claim my lot and literally had cops called on me. What I did next turned her little power trip into the most expensive mistake of her life. And the first one is titled, HOA Board Called Police When I Said I Am Not Part of the HOA. I own the parking lot. So for some context, my grandpa owned a small auto repair business for about 30 years. The shop sat on a commercial lot right at the edge of what eventually became a planned residential neighborhood with an HOA. When the developers built the neighborhood in the early 2000s, they bought up most of the surrounding land, but my grandpa refused to sell his lot. The developers had no choice but to build around him. The lot ended up sitting right at the main entrance to the neighborhood, basically a paved rectangle between the neighborhood entrance and the main road, and when my grandpa passed away in 2019, he left the lot to me in his will. The shop building had already been torn down a few years prior because it was falling apart, but the lot itself was still in decent shape. It was paved, roughly 60 spaces if you packed them in, and zoned commercial. I had no immediate plans for it, and to be honest, I was still grieving and didn't want to think about it too much. Here's the thing though, the neighborhood has a parking problem. The HOA has strict rules about street parking, no overnight parking on the street, no parking in front of someone else's house for more than 2 hours, no commercial vehicles in driveways, the usual HOA stuff, you know. A lot of the houses only have 2-car garages and short driveways. And if you've got a family with 3 drivers, or you have guests over, or you own a boat trailer, you are out of luck. So pretty quickly after my grandfather's shop came down, residents started using the empty lot as overflow parking. I did not mind this at all. These were my grandfather's neighbors for decades, and plenty of them had been good to him over the years. After I inherited the lot, I spent a weekend cleaning it up, filling some potholes with cold patch and painting some basic lines so people would not park like maniacs. Word got around that I didn't mind people using it, and within a few months it had basically become the official, or unofficial, overflow parking for the whole neighborhood. Mind you, I was not making any money off of it. I was actually spending a little money maintaining it, picking up trash, sealing cracks, replacing the faded lines once a year. I considered it a way to honor my grandfather's relationship with the community, and for about 2 years everything was fine. People parked there, I kept it clean, nobody had any issues. At some point I put up a small handwritten sign that just said, "Feel free to park here," so people would not feel weird about using it. It genuinely felt like a community thing. In early 2022, the HOA elected a new board president. I'm gonna call her Linda because that's not her real name, but it fits the energy perfectly. Linda was one of those people who peaked in middle school student government and had been chasing that high ever since. She had lived in the neighborhood for about 5 years and had apparently been lobbying hard for the board president position for most of that time. From what I heard later, she ran unopposed because nobody else wanted the job, which was just classic. Well, about 3 weeks after she took over, I got a letter in the mail. An official-looking letter informing me that my lot was in violation of several HOA covenants. The violations included unapproved surface materials, the asphalt that had been there for 2 decades, unapproved signage, my hand-little written sign, and failure to submit an architectural review application for lot modifications. The letter demanded I appear at the next board meeting to discuss bringing my property into compliance. I called the HOA's management company and politely explained that my lot was not part of the HOA. It was a separately deeded commercial property that predated the neighborhood by about 25 years. The woman on the phone was actually very nice about it and said that she would pass the information along to the board. A week later I got another letter. This one was from Linda personally. It stated that all properties within the neighborhood name, community boundaries are subject to HOA governance, and that my continued non-compliance would result in fines and potential legal action. She had included a little map of the neighborhood with my lot shaded in as if it were a part of the community. I don't know if she drew it herself or had someone make it, but my lot was colored in with the same green as the rest of the neighborhood, like it had always been part of the plan. And by the way guys, that's really smart. If I ever want to take over someone else's property, I would just draw a map myself and then color both properties with the same color. Absolutely brilliant. I wrote back with some documents showing my lot as a separate commercial parcel and a highlighted section of the HOA's own CC&Rs that listed every parcel number governed by the HOA. My lot's parcel number was not on that list because it was never part of the HOA, and because it predated the HOA by many years. You would think that would be the end of it. Well, you would be wrong. Over the next several months, Linda made it her personal mission to assert control over my lot. So here's a rough timeline of what happened. Month 1 after my letter, I received a final warning notice taped to the handwritten sign on my lot stating that I had 15 days to remove the unauthorized signage and submit to an architectural review or face fines of $50 per day. Month number 2, this is important, so pay attention because that's the part that comes back around later, someone filed a complaint with the city's code enforcement office. The complaint alleged that I was operating a so-called unlicensed commercial parking operation on my lot. Those were the exact words on the complaint form, which I later obtained a copy of through a public records request, an unlicensed commercial parking operation. Let me be absolutely clear about what was actually happening at this point. I was letting my neighbors park on my inherited lot for free. That's it. No fees, no tickets, no attendant, no signage beyond a handwritten note. Zero commercial anything. I was literally spending my own money to maintain a lot I was giving away for free. And by the way guys, how does the saying go? Good deeds never go unpunished, especially when you are dealing with an HOA. And by the way, if you still enjoy the HOA stories, please don't forget to like the video and let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. Thank you so much for the support. Anyway, a code enforcement officer came out, looked around, talked to me for about 10 minutes, and I showed him my deed and explained I was not charging anyone a dime, and he closed the case on the spot. He actually told me off the record that the complaint was clearly someone with an axe to grind and that he sees stuff like this from HOA disputes all the time. I never got official confirmation of who filed the complaint, but I want you to remember those exact words. Unlicensed commercial parking operation. File that away. Month number 3, I started finding flyers on cars parked in my lot. The flyers warned residents that parking in the lot was at their own risk and that the HOA could not guarantee the safety or legality of vehicles parked on non-compliant properties. Several residents called me confused and worried. One woman was almost in tears because she thought her car was gonna get towed. I reassured everyone it was fine and that the HOA had zero authority over my lot. Month number 4, Linda hired an attorney. I received a certified letter from a law firm informing me that the HOA maintained its position that my lot fell within the community boundary and that I was obligated to either bring the property into compliance with all applicable HOA covenants or cease allowing HOA residents to use the lot for vehicle parking purposes. Comply or stop. Those were my two options according to Linda's lawyer. My own lawyer, my buddy from college who practices real estate law, so this was basically a free phone call, reviewed the letter and said it was a scare tactic with no legal basis. The lot was clearly and unambiguously not part of the HOA, not even close. He said if they actually filed anything it would get laughed out of court and they would probably be on the hook for my legal fees. Month number 5, I heard from a couple of residents that Linda told the board she was handling the parking lot situation and that she had allocated $5,000 of HOA funds for legal expenses related to my lot. $5,000 of homeowners' dues money to fight a legal battle she had zero chance of winning over a lot that was not even theirs against a guy who had been doing them a favor for free. Month number 6 and 7, weird quiet period, no letters, no complaints and no flyers. I thought maybe she had finally come to her senses or maybe the other board members had talked her down, but I was wrong. Month number 8, the chain. I drove out to the lot one Saturday morning to do some cleanup, fill a couple of new potholes, sweep up some broken glass somebody had left, general maintenance stuff, and then there was a chain across the entrance to my lot. A heavy-duty chain with a padlock bolted into two metal posts that had been cemented into the ground on either side of the lot entrance. There was a laminated sign hanging from the chain that read, "Lot closed by order of neighborhood name HOA Board of Directors, no unauthorized access." I sat in my truck for a solid 5 minutes, just staring at it. They had physically installed hardware on my property. They had cemented posts into my asphalt. Without my permission, without my knowledge, and without any legal right to do so whatsoever. While I was sitting there trying to process what I was looking at, Linda appeared. Her house was one of the first ones past the neighborhood entrance, and she had a clear line of sight to the lot from her front room, so I'm pretty sure she had been watching from her window. She walked up to my truck window with this smug look on her face, arms crossed, and said something along the lines of, "The board has voted to close the lot until you agree to work with us. That's for the safety of the community." I got out of my truck and I told her as calmly I could manage, "Linda, for the last time, I'm not part of your HOA and this is my property. You have installed structures on my private lot without my consent. I need you to remove them today." She shook her head and told me that the board had formally designated the lot as HOA common area at their last meeting and that I needed to stop accessing the property without board approval. I said, "You're telling me I need your permission to walk onto my own land?" She said the board's decision was final, and then she pulled out her phone right in front of me. She called the police on me and told them there was someone trespassing on HOA property and refusing to leave. I just leaned against my truck and waited. The officer who showed up was a guy I actually recognized. He had responded to a previous call related to the lot back when the code enforcement complaint triggered a police log entry in month 2. He remembered me. He looked at the chain, he looked at the sign, he looked at me, and he looked at Linda, and he listened to both sides. Then he told Linda that this appeared to be a civil dispute and that I had documentation showing ownership of the lot, and that based on what he was seeing, installing structures on someone else's property without authorization could constitute criminal mischief or vandalism. He told her that I would be within my rights to file a report against the HOA, and he suggested that she consult with her attorney before taking any further action regarding my property. Linda went white as a sheet. She stammered something about the board vote and community safety, and the officer just kind of looked at her. She didn't end up filing a trespassing report that day. I did file a vandalism report though, and that afternoon I went home, got my bolt cutters, came back and cut the chain of my property. I took photos of everything, including the cemented posts, the damage to the asphalt and all of it. Now let's move on to the malicious compliance part. Here's where I would normally be the bigger person. And yeah, I had been the bigger person for an entire year at this point. I'd been patient, polite and reasonable while this woman sent me bogus violation notices, wasted HOA money on frivolous legal threats, filed complaints with the city and police, and distributed unauthorized flyers to intimidate residents and literally chained my property shut. So I was done being the bigger person. That night I sat in my kitchen going through every single piece of documentation from this whole saga. Every letter, every notice, every complaint, and I kept coming back to two things. The first was the code enforcement complaint from month number 2, the one where Linda reported me to the city for running an unlicensed commercial parking operation. The city investigated and found nothing because it was not a commercial parking operation. It was free. It was a favor. It was not commercial in any sense of the word, but Linda had insisted it was. She had put it in writing on an official city complaint form. She had specifically used the word commercial and specifically used the word unlicensed. She had told the city of redacted that I, the owner of that lot, was running a commercial parking business without a license. The second thing was the certified letter from her attorney. The one that gave me exactly two choices: bring the property into compliance with all applicable HOA covenants or cease allowing HOA residents to use the lot for vehicle parking purposes. Comply with HOA rules or stop the free parking. Pick one. Well, I sat there staring at both documents side by side and something clicked. Linda had told the city I was running an unlicensed commercial parking operation. I wasn't, but you know what? She was right that it was unlicensed. Because I did not have a license. I did not have a license because it was not a commercial parking operation, but the property was zoned commercial. So I could get a license. There was literally nothing stopping me from getting one. And her own lawyer had told me to either comply with the HOA rules, which I couldn't do because I was not in the HOA, or stop giving free parking to HOA residents. So I decided to do exactly what Linda had been saying all along. She said I was running a commercial parking operation? Fine. I would run a commercial parking operation. She said it was unlicensed? Fine, I would get a license. Her lawyer said stop giving HOA residents free parking? Fine, I would stop giving them free parking. Linda was about to be right about everything she ever said about me and my lot, and it was gonna cost her community every single cent it saved them. I went to the city and applied for a commercial parking permit. Since the lot was already zoned commercial from my grandfather's old business, it was mostly just paperwork and a couple inspections. The zoning was already in place, the lot already met the minimum requirements for a commercial surface lot. It took about 6 weeks to get everything sorted, because the city moves at the speed of a glacier, but I eventually had everything I needed. Business license, operating permit, liability insurance, the works. All by the book, every box checked. Every fee was paid, fully licensed, not unlicensed anymore, Linda. Then I had a sign professionally made, big, clear, and impossible to miss. I mounted it right at the entrance of the lot where Linda's chain used to be. It said, private parking lot, licensed commercial parking facility, HOA members $10 per day. Non-HOA residents, free, with registration. Unauthorized vehicles will be towed at owner's expense. I made sure the sign said licensed commercial parking facility. I wanted those words visible from Linda's front window. I set up a payment system through one of those parking management apps, and to register you had to enter your vehicle info and your home address. If your address was inside the HOA neighborhood boundaries, the system automatically applied the $10 daily rate. If you lived anywhere else in the surrounding area and just needed overflow parking for whatever reason, it was free with a registered account. Simple. For enforcement, I set up a basic camera system at the entrance and exit, and the HOA neighborhood only has 2 access points and every house has a visible address number, so over the months I'd been dealing with Linda's harassment, I'd gotten to know exactly which cars belong to which houses. I recognized most of the regulars on site. For anyone new, the app registration handled the sorting. Between the cameras, the app data, and my own familiarity with the neighborhood, it was pretty straightforward to keep track. I also hired a local towing company on contract. Anyone parked without registration got 1 warning ticket on their windshield, and after that they would be towed. I was not messing around anymore. Everything Linda accused me of, I became. Everything her lawyer told me to do, I did to the letter. And the reaction was immediate. Residents who had been parking on my lot for free for over 2 years suddenly had to pay $10 a day. A few of them came to me directly, some frustrated, some just confused. I was honest with every single one of them. I told them I'd been happy to let everyone park for free. I told them it was something I did because my grandpa cared about this community and I wanted to carry that forward. But their HOA board president had spent an entire year trying to claim my property, call the cops on me, and filed a complaint with the city calling my free lot an unlicensed commercial parking operation, and then spent $5,000 of their dues money on a lawyer whose letter gave me no option except to stop the free arrangement, put flyers on their cars to scare them away from the lot, and physically chained my property shut with cemented posts that damaged my asphalt. I told them the free parking was an act of goodwill and that goodwill had been exhausted by their board. I told them their board president was the one who called it a commercial operation. I just made her honest. Most of them were actually understanding once they heard the full story, and a lot of them said they had no idea Linda had been doing all of this. The flyers had worried them for sure, but nobody knew about the lawyer, the police calls, or the chain. The chain went up and came down on the same Saturday, so most people never saw it. A handful were mad at me, but honestly, the vast majority turned their anger towards Linda and the board once they understood what had happened, and people paid. That's the thing, some residents found alternatives, doubled up in their garages, or got creative with their driveways. But a lot of them simply didn't have another option. The HOA's own street parking rules were so restrictive that if you had a third car or a teenager who just started driving or family visiting for a week, you needed that lot. Within the first few weeks, I was consistently getting about 20 to 30 HOA cars a day, sometimes more on weekends when people had guests, and at $10 a pop that worked out to a lot of money I was missing out on before. I was honestly stunned. Something I'd been maintaining out of my own pocket and providing for free was suddenly generating real meaningful income. All because Linda told the city that I was running a commercial parking operation and her own lawyer told me to stop giving away free parking. I mean, they wrote the instructions and I just followed them. The HOA residents were furious, but not at me, at Linda, because they didn't just lose free parking. They lost free parking because their board president had spent a year antagonizing the one person who was doing them a massive favor, and she had used their own dues money to do it. The way I heard it from a resident who had been keeping me in the loop, there was apparently one moment at the emergency HOA meeting that really crystallized things for people. A guy stood up and read the code enforcement complaint out loud. The one where Linda had reported me for running an unlicensed commercial parking operation, and then he pointed out that thanks to Linda's complaint, it was now a fully licensed commercial parking operation. He said, she literally told the city this was a parking business. She was wrong back then, and she made herself right, and we are all paying for it. Somebody else apparently held up their phone, showing the parking app, and said that they had spent $150 in the last 2 weeks. And then the room lost it. Residents demanded to know why Linda had spent $5,000 of their dues on legal fees for a fight she had no chance of winning, and they demanded to know why she had called the police on the lot owner and filed complaints with code enforcement that directly led to the lot going commercial. They demanded to know who authorized the chain installation and whether the board understood they had exposed the HOA to liability for property damages and potential criminal mischief charges. Somebody apparently stood up and did the math on how much the neighborhood was now collectively spending on parking per month and compared it to the $0 they had been spending before Linda got involved, and Linda tried to defend herself by saying she was protecting the community's interests and that the lot should rightfully be part of the HOA common areas. She argued that she'd been trying to bring a non-compliant property under the community's umbrella for the benefit of all residents, and according to someone who was there, she actually said the words, "I was right to file that complaint about the code enforcement report." Well, the room apparently went dead silent for a second before about 15 people started talking over each other. That went over about as well as you would expect with a room full of people now paying $300 a month to park somewhere they used to park for free because of that exact complaint. They held a vote of no confidence. 85% voted to remove Linda from the board. She was done. 2 of her allies on the board, the ones who had apparently rubber-stamped the chain installation, resigned the same night. The new board president reached out to me about a week after the vote. He drove over to the lot one evening, shook my hand, looked me in the eye, and straight up apologized. No hedging, no both sides nonsense. He said the previous board had been completely out of line, that what they did was wrong, and that he was personally embarrassed by how I had been treated. Then he asked if there was any way we could work something out that would be fair for everyone, and I liked him immediately. This guy was reasonable, he was direct, and not once did he try to pretend the HOA had any claim to my lot. He acknowledged it was my property and that any arrangement would be entirely at my discretion. We worked out a deal over a couple of meetings. The HOA would pay me a flat monthly lease fee for dedicated use of the lot by neighborhood residents. The fee was less than what I'd been pulling in from daily parking, but it was guaranteed monthly income with zero day-to-day management hassle on my end. No more monitoring the cameras, no more checking the app, no more dealing with people who forgot to register. The HOA would handle communicating the rules to residents, and I would handle any major maintenance or repairs. Clean and simple. I'm not gonna share the exact lease amount for privacy reasons, but I'll say it's a comfortable 4 figures per month and the agreement is reviewed annually. Both sides are happy with it so far, and the lot that I was spending my own money to maintain and giving away for free is now generating enough monthly income that I was able to quit the weekend side job I'd been working for years. My grandpa left me a lot and some good memories, but Linda, bless her heart, turned it into a revenue stream. And the next one is a malicious compliance story, which is titled "Stacking Trash as High as I Can." So I live in a subdivision rental community. Everyone has their own home to rent, but it's apartment-style living according to the property management. And my family goes through a lot of trash each week with diapers, formula cans and so on. And then last year I called the trash company to see about getting a second can for our house. They directed me to call the property manager, who directed me back to the trash company, which ended up being a waste of time until I eventually got at least some help from someone at the trash company. The helpful person called the property manager and then called me back to let me know that they wouldn't be letting anyone have a second can even if I paid extra for it. So what can I do if I have extra trash that needs to go out? You can place your trash on the ground next to the can. So guess what I started doing? I started placing our extra bags on the ground next to the can for about a month until the property manager sent out a community-wide email asking us to stop placing bags outside the cans because the trash company charges for each bag outside the cans. So then I inquired with the manager again about getting a second can, and they still try to pin it on the trash company. So for the last 3 months I've been stacking the trash on top of the can, practically making a game out of it with a couple of our other neighbors each week. Who can stack the trash the highest? Well, suffice to say, we're moving out at the end of this month, but we finally got an email today from the property manager saying, beginning March 1st, there will be an overflow dumpster in the back corner by the service gate for any trash that doesn't fit in your trash cans. And yeah guys, thanks for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.